So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this afternoon's session, looking at Latin America and the Caribbean and the wonderful delegation that I have on stage with me today. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Mark Laybourne, and I work for the World Bank, and I co-lead the World Bank Group's Offshore Wind Development Program. I've got some fantastic speakers to join us today. They are part of a large delegation that we have brought to Europe to look at offshore wind, how it has been done here, what has been learnt, and what they can take away and learn for their own countries, and to understand the challenges in developing this industry. This is part of a large initiative that the World Bank, ESMAP-IFC, have started 2 years ago to help developing countries establish offshore wind, and ultimately our objective is to help them to get turbines in the water and offshore wind happening as quickly as possible. But we also need to make sure that the regulations and all the framework is in place to allow the development to happen, to the projects to be financed. So we're happy to work and support the governments in doing that. I'll start by just asking each of you to introduce yourself and just explain your role, your affiliation, and your interest in offshore, your personal interest in offshore wind. Hugo, why don't we start with you?
Hi, my name is Hugo Morales. I'm from the Dominican Republic. I'm an electrical engineer with a master's degree in renewable energy. I work at the Ministry of Energy and Mines of the Dominican Republic in charge of renewable energy. We are very interested in offshore wind energy, but we have some experience in my country in onshore, on land wind power. So we have at this time in operation nearly 400 megawatts of wind power and more than 400 megawatts in photovoltaics. And we are interested in increasing our renewable energy in the country because at this time, 74% of our generation matrix is from technologies that use fossil fuels, and only about 26% is from renewable energy. So we need to increase our renewable energy in order to use what we have, sun and wind.
Thanks, Hugo. It's a good introduction. Floria, I'll turn to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Floria Quesada. I'm Costa Rican. This is a little country that is located in the Central American Isthmus between Panama and Nicaragua. In our case, we have 100% of renewable energy, but we must look forward to other types of or other kinds of electricity, because our basis is the hydropower, hydroelectrical energy. That's why we came here, so we can have more information about offshore wind electricity.
Okay. Thank you. Gustavo, over to you.
Thank you, Mark, and good afternoon for all. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Gustavo Ponte. I am Deputy Head of Power Generation at the Energy Research Office. It's a company linked to the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and we are responsible for the energy planning studies to support the policy in energy in Brazil. So we've been studying offshore wind since 2018, and since then we have been constantly updating our studies and considering offshore wind in the energy planning of Brazil. I mean, the 10-year plan, the long-term plan. So offshore wind is already a candidate in the plan. And in 2020, we released our roadmap for offshore wind. We realized that we have a huge potential for this source It's something like 700 gigawatts, considering areas up to 50 meters depth. So, but at the same time, we realized that we have many challenges to deal to make it possible. So again, to discuss this kind of challenges here, it will be a good opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks, Gustavo. Last but not least, Juan, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here. Thank you. My name is Juan Tomasini. I'm with ANCAP. ANCAP is the national oil company from Uruguay. I'm a chemical engineer and a petroleum engineer, working in ANCAP since 2007, mostly in exploration and production projects offshore. Since 2018, we started to work in an interinstitutional team with the Ministry of Energy and also with the utility company in Uruguay to develop hydrogen projects. So we started with the first pilot project for hydrogen, and last year we started with the idea of hydrogen production from offshore wind, and based on our experience in offshore and also in bidding around terms and contract models, we are now taking the lead to make a bidding round, tendering process for hydrogen from offshore wind.
Great, thanks. So let's start with you, Hugo. Perhaps you could tell us a bit more about your generation. You said you have some solar and some onshore wind. What challenges have you had in doing that, and what challenges do you see in doing more renewable energy?
Yeah, as I said before, our generation matrix is about 74% of fossil fuels. So the country, we need to make a change and increase the renewable energies. So we are focusing in solar, photovoltaics, and wind power. And also we are with the World Bank working on offshore wind power. At this time, the country, as I said before, there is about more than 800 megawatts in operation of wind and photovoltaics energy, and there are about 600 megawatts under construction of photovoltaics, and the government want to make a bidding process this at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year, about 1,200 megawatts of wind and photovoltaics in order to increase our renewable energy. We want not to depend we need to import of our fuels, so we want to cut that and not depend of the fuel, imported fuel.
Imports, yes. So so you're importing all your fuel at the moment, and you need to decarbonize. You need to increase renewables. Have you set any long-term targets for renewable energy?
As I said, we want to in this year to launch a bidding process, because we want that next year, in the case of photovoltaics, the projects can be done in 1 year. We want to have those new projects online. And in the case of wind power, about 2 years, we want to have them. Also, we are thinking about exploring green hydrogen. And in the case of offshore wind power, we need to make some changes in our legislation in order to be able to to know how to use the sea for the construction of offshore wind power.
Okay. So I think your story is very similar to many other islands. They're importing lots of fossil fuels.
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
And we want to also, we are thinking about offshore wind power because we need also to protect the land that can be useful for agricultural purpose and for the raising of animals for human consumption. That's why we want to accelerate the process in order to be able to use offshore wind power.
Okay, thanks. Floria, Costa Rica already has 100% renewable energy, which is an amazing achievement, and congratulations to your country for that.
Yes.
Could you talk about how have you got to 100% renewable? What is that renewable mix? You've got hydro. What is in the country?
Okay, yes, in Costa Rica it's a special case because we already achieved 100% of renewable energy with the basis of the electricity generation is hydropower. And then we have aeolic energy onshore. Also we have geothermal because in Costa Rica we have volcanoes, and also solar PV. That is the basis of the matrix. We don't have offshore projects yet, but we must see what other kinds of renewable energy can we develop in our country. That's the main goal of being here. Yeah.
And do you export any of your electricity?
Yeah, we export electricity. Central America, in Central America is a transmission line, and Costa Rica had exported, yes, electricity to other Central American countries that doesn't have the matrix that Costa Rica has, the mix, sorry, that Costa Rica has, and so maybe it's better for them to ask to Costa Rica for electricity than to buy oil to generate electricity. Yeah.
Okay. So you could use offshore wind maybe to export, maybe?
Yeah. Offshore wind electricity could be very useful to export, for instance, or also to generate hydrogen, yeah, because in transport we depend on oil, yeah, so we must do something about that, yeah, so we can not produce CO2. That is also a target or goal that we've got, yeah.
Okay. And offshore wind could also help you to diversify maybe your electricity.
Yes, the matrix, yeah. The mix, I'm sorry. Yeah, we must diversify the mix because we don't want to depend only in one type of energy. Yeah.
Very important. Gustavo, there's been a lot of talk about Brazil. The market there has seemed to have exploded on this industry interest for the country. I think there's now 169 gigawatts of projects or more have been proposed, and I'm sure that we'll see a lot more in the coming months probably. Can you tell us maybe why? Why do you think we have seen this interest, and what is happening in Brazil at the moment?
Well, when we were developing the roadmap in 2019 and 2020, there was only 6 applications for offshore wind environmental licensing process. And then after the roadmap, things just happened so fast. Many developers started to talk to us and submit their applications because the wind conditions are so good at some parts of the country, and it includes all the regions of our coast. So, and we have such a great experience with onshore wind and solar, with energy auctions, for example, that I think all these conditions have attracted the interest from developers. So that's why we decided to establish the framework for offshore wind. So recently in January, we released a decree with the conditions for the seabed leasing, the general rules. And very recently, 2 weeks ago, there was 2 ordinances released, and they are at public consultation right now, and bringing the details of the decree, the step-by-step and procedures that developers should follow to have the rights to the granting process. And also, in this framework, we also consider the possibility of a planned process. I mean, we, as the Energy Research Office, could select a site and develop the studies. So we have 2 kinds of approaches, the planned process and developer-led approach. So I think with these conditions, we can let the market do what they want to do. I mean, do their studies and find a business model that could fit to our market. But at the same time, if in the future it makes sense, we can make the studies on behalf of the needs of the system, for example.
Okay, I understand. So Brazil has made some good progress recently, coming out with a regulation for offshore wind and starting to give a regulatory framework to deliver projects. You mentioned the ordinance is available for public consultation.
Yeah.
When is the end date, and how do people find out more about it?
So it was, the total time was 30 days for submit suggestions, and it ends on October 9th.
Okay.
So please make your suggestions and contributions. You're more than welcome to do so, because we've tried to make the most of the international experience. We try to learn with all the countries that have developed their market for offshore wind. And as many countries said to us, try not to make the same mistakes. Here are the lessons learned. So that's what we are trying to do, to have a clear and framework for offshore wind with the best practice, considering all the experiences around the world.
Okay, thanks. And so Juan, you're starting to think now about a similar approach for Uruguay. Could you just tell us maybe some of the work you've been doing, also maybe why we're looking at offshore wind in Uruguay? What is the reason, the driver for it?
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Yeah. The issue with Uruguay is we already also have 100% of renewable, almost 100% renewable energy on our grid. So there is not really a driver to inject more green electrons to the grid. So actually the driver is more focused on the hydrogen. We worked, and this was led by the Ministry of Energy and Environment, the green hydrogen roadmap. This was published by the ministry in his web page, and it's open to public consultation as well. Because, having decarbonized the electric grid, now the next step is to decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors, and that's why hydrogen came into the picture. So we have this roadmap. Offshore is one chapter, let's say, of this roadmap. Of course, what will happen first, for sure, will be onshore, and we have still plenty potential for onshore renewables related to hydrogen. But if we want to make really big projects, offshore is very well suited for that. I mean, we have very good physical conditions, let's say wind speeds. We have a very extensive continental shelf with very shallow water depths over a wide area. So, and we already have data from the exploration of hydrocarbons that can help to make the first feasibility studies. So, the reason is kind of that, is to be able to make big projects for hydrogen production in a costly manner. So that for that we are targeting to attract big investors and very big companies with experience in this kind of projects. Each area has around that we will be offering has around 500 square kilometers of at least. We think will be at least 2 gigawatts per area, and we have the idea to offer in the first bidding round 10 of those areas.
How many?
10.
10. It's a lot of capacity.
Yes.
Big ambitions.
Yes. And of course will be for the export market.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Does Uruguay have local use of hydrogen, or is this just for export?
No. The hydrogen is just starting. We are just studying the first proposal for Uruguay. Is studying the first proposal for the first pilot projects, and already some companies has come to Uruguay proposing bigger projects. More for the local scale, but also for the export market. But the local market is not yet developed. Even if we develop, we have made some numbers. If we develop and change the whole fleet of, for example, heavy-duty trucks to fuel cell trucks, will be around 100 kilotons of hydrogen per year. And this is just a fraction of the potential we have in the offshore. So offshore projects for hydrogen are meant almost exclusively for the export and global market.
Okay. So what do you think then are the next steps? And do you have a timeline in mind or not?
Yes, sure. Yeah. Just a little bit of the background. We started with this around 1 year ago with a ministerial delegation, also a commission very similar to this one. And we started a dialogue with the energy companies, trying to let's say, to share our ideas for this kind of a process. And we had very good reception. We have a lot of input from them, and that helped us to create the first, what we call the first draft for the bid round terms and contract model. So we are now in exchanging this with the ministry, and the exchange is going really well. So we are, from the, let's say, technical and contractual dimension, we are almost ready to go to the market. Now what we are doing is making some regulatory and legal adaptations that are really needed for ANCAP to put this bidding round on the street, on the market, let's say. For example, in January, we hope to have the legal duties to be able to deal with hydrogen. That this is something that has been already put on consideration to the Parliament and will be officially on January. And after that, we have a couple more of decrees that for complete the formal steps, let's say. So we are hoping to make the announcement next year, and we will have two moments on the year for opening proposals. The idea is to make a continuous bidding round system, opening offers on May and November. So on the first one, we are targeting to open the first offers on November 2023.
Okay. Great timelines. We've heard about hydrogen for Uruguay. Both Floria and Hugo have mentioned hydrogen. Brazil, I think hydrogen is a big part of the strategy. Is that right?
Yes, it is, because we had very recently the national program for hydrogen was announced. We are now working on the details of it, but we already have the guidelines. And in our 10-year plan, the 2031-year plan that was released in the beginning of the year, for the first time we had an exclusive chapter for hydrogen, just to show how important it is for the energy planning. And it's impressive because we do have the domestic market that nowadays relies mostly on gray hydrogen, so there's a lot of opportunity to decarbonize for fertilizers, for refineries, and so on. But also Brazil is seen as a potential exporter of green hydrogen, because due to our potential on onshore wind, solar, hydropower, and offshore wind as well. And in the plan, we showed, tried to bring some numbers regarding the potential of hydrogen production from different sources, just to show how big it could be. And considering the potential for hydrogen production only from offshore wind, for example, it means that technically we could produce 350 million tons per year of green hydrogen. This is almost what the world needs by 2050, according to the International Agency. So that's a big opportunity here. And what the message that we tried to bring in the plan was the cost reduction in offshore wind could play an important role on its development on Brazilian market, not only to supply the grid, but also to produce hydrogen, because we have good conditions, wind conditions. We have a giant port prepared to export. It's very close to Europe. It's on the edge of Brazil. We have representatives from there here within the Brazilian delegation. So there's a lot of synergies that we are looking at that Brazil can play a very important role in the international hydrogen market from different sources.
Okay. And are there any other reasons Brazil would want to do offshore wind? Maybe jobs or local economic impact?
Well, this is a good question, because when you look only at the energy planning sector or the aspects of the grid of the system, we don't see offshore wind as competitive yet, at least based on the current numbers that we have. Of course, we are constantly updating the numbers, but maybe that could be, there could be other reasons to do so. It's not clear yet, because one of the points that we try to bring on the long-term plan, on our 2050 energy plan, the key message is Brazil has a good challenge in managing the abundance of resources, and most of them are renewable and already competitive. So, and offshore wind comes in this context. So trying to find the role of offshore wind, it's been quite interesting, challenging, but the interest from the market has been growing so fast that it motivated us to go further and investigate what offshore wind could bring in terms of contribution to the system.
Okay, thanks. Floria, I'm going to ask you, what are you doing at the moment to look at offshore wind? Are you investigating your potential further?
Yes, we're at the very beginning. It's not the case of other countries. In my country, there is a company from the government whose name is ISE, who is in charge to construct all the projects over 50 megawatts in our country. So we are trying to look for information in order to give all this data to ISE, and so they can look for or design a project that could be done in the north, in the Pacific coast, but in the north, very near from Nicaragua. And they could develop that project there, because there are already studies that have been done about the speed of the wind in that part of the country. And it is said that it could be a very good project to develop there. So I'm asking for information in this opportunity so I can give to this company, and this company can develop this project, contracting other companies, private companies that makes, for example, the foundations or the tower or the rotor or turbines. But I know it's not the same case of other countries that they ask for a developer to come. In my country, that things are done different, and I have to explain this to the people that want to make to give us the money so we can develop these kind of projects in Costa Rica.
So I think that's a very important point. You know, in Costa Rica, we were probably unlikely to see international offshore wind developers coming as they are doing in Brazil to do the projects. It's going to be led by the government.
Yeah, yeah.
But with a lot of help, I hope, from established people.
Yes.
From
We have done this in the past. It's not new. Before we have already made, for example, hydroelectrical power projects where we ask for the money, and maybe we don't know, we don't have never done, for example, a dam, and so we have to ask somebody else to construct it for us. So we can make these kind of agreements between this company and the private sector. Yes.
Okay. So, Hugo, in Dominican Republic, the 800 megawatts of onshore wind and solar, is that private or is it government? Or is
all the generation in Dominican Republic is private.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The wholesale market in the Dominican Republic is a private sector that install all generators.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has that been delivered under maybe a feed-in tariff, or is it auctions, or what is your process?
There is the process in order to, there is a tariff that depends on the technology, and there is an institution that do the coordination of all the generators in the system, in order to also know who must pay for that energy, depending of who is the other part in the PPA they have. As I mentioned before, we want to change that matrix of all that fossil fuel technology. We know we have a great potential of offshore wind power. We have some about 63 gigawatts of potential. We are working at the first stage in that process, working with the World Bank, and we have great opportunities because we have a very good wind speed on land and better offshore, and very constant, highly constant, the wind, and but we have some challenge regarding that, because the Dominican Republic is in the path of the hurricanes, so that is a technical challenge that we must afford.
Yeah, but there may be lessons to learn from other parts of the world.
Sure.
Yeah. We have about 10 minutes remaining, but I wanted to open the floor to questions. We have plenty of people in the audience, so can I see any hands for questions? Anyone got anything to ask? You don't need to be shy. There must be somebody. Okay, well, whilst you're thinking, maybe I'll turn back to you and say we have been on this study tour for the last, I think we're 5 days now. Maybe any reflections from any of you, or views, or things maybe that have surprised you this week?
Well, I think an important message that we had from the Netherlands, for example, is that we've been talking to their local government and the agency responsible for all the offshore wind development, and they recognized that they realized that they made some mistakes, or at least they were able to improve their system during the process, during the years. So, and they were very directly when they said, we made those mistakes here, you can avoid, you can step to the next phase and don't do the same. And it's quite interesting because at the same time, they say, we are not saying that what we do here, you should do in your country, because the context is different. So we should take the lessons learned, but adapt to the reality of each country. This for me was an important message during these so interesting discussions we have been having.
Good. I completely agree with you. Any other?
I just want to add that have been a great experience, the study tour. So I want to just to thank the World Bank Group, ESMAP, and IFC because of the opportunity they are giving to us, to my country, in order to learn about the offshore wind power. And thanks because they are working hard with us in our country in order to help us to develop that technology for the benefit of my country, the benefit of the environment, and that means the benefit of all the world.
I'd say it's a pleasure. We'd be very happy to help you, Hugo. Floria, any?
Yes, as Hugo had said, I'm very thankful because you have treated us so well these days. Also, for me, it's, as I said before, I have a lot of information now that I will keep it with myself and bring it to my country so I can explain there about all these topics. And also, for me, it was very important to understand what other countries are facing that I didn't knew before I come here. And so that was very important also.
Good. Juan?
Yeah, for me, one of the most interesting things is to understand that each country has its different framework, a different motivation to do, for example, offshore wind. And it's great to learn from the countries that have already gone through this experience and understand also how they have changed during the time, the way they do things, the way they make bidding rounds, the auctions. I mean, so I think it's very valuable for us and will help us a lot. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
I think one of the things for me, the takeaways that I've really enjoyed is getting countries together to talk to each other. And you all might not have met or had that conversation before, but I hope that these countries that we have brought together realize that you're all in a similar position. Okay, you're at slightly different stages, but you're still very early in the development of your industry. And I hope that this collaboration will continue and you will start talking to each other more frequently and where we work together, especially as your neighbors. Let me go back to the audience and see if there's anyone thought of any questions. Okay. Okay? You got okay.
Hello, yes. I would like to know if there's any plan in between the Latin American countries to start tackling the wind offshore sector jointly, cooperatively, in the long term, let's say, or from a Mercosur more kind of perspective, or is it the plan to just that each country will start tackling the wind offshore sector individually? Like, is there a plan in the long run for the whole continent to start tackling this brand new sector altogether?
Was that a specific question to a specific? I struggled to hear you. Was it specific for a specific country?
Oh no, just to
any
of them, yeah.
Okay.
So,
What?
it was plans for the long term. I believe the question was. Has anyone got a specific long-term plan, targets maybe? Is that the question?
Yeah, but for Latin America, yeah.
Regional, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
region. As far as I know, there is not such a thing. Yeah, yeah. Maybe also because each country has its own motivation also and driver for these kind of things. But yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe there is, and I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I think the same applies to Brazil because at least until now, we've been looking to our market because it's by itself it's a lot to do. But I think this is an interesting question because we are neighbors here, as Mark said, with similar challenges. So I think in the following step should be like this to discuss with the neighbor countries. Because as far as some developers are mentioning, if we develop our offshore wind market, maybe we can have a similar experience that we are having with onshore, where we export equipment to neighbor countries. So, of course, it will depend on the conditions and how the market will be developed, but that's a good starting point to keep the conversations with other countries.
Okay.
In the case of Costa Rica, we are in Central America, and I can say that we are working individually, even though, for example, there is probably a offshore wind project very near from Nicaragua's boundary, and we are not expecting to have turbines in the side of Nicaragua, where it's the Costa Rica's project. So there is no, I think that the answer is that we are working individually. Each country are making the best they can and not as a region. Yeah.
In the case of Dominican Republic, we also work individually as a country. Dominican Republic is in an island in the Caribbean named Hispaniola, that 2/3 of the island is the Dominican Republic. At the west of the island, 1/3 of the island is Haiti. We have no interconnection with them, so we work in order to solve our own problems.
Okay. But even if you're direct neighbors, you're not working directly with them, you might be thinking of working with other countries in the region, including America, sorry. So we have floating wind being proposed on the west coast and lots in the Gulf very close to you.
Yeah.
So hopefully there will be opportunities to collaborate.
Sure.
Okay. Have probably time for one more question. We had a lady down the front. This one, we'll take two questions.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your contribution. So I think Uruguay, you posed an invitation that you are looking for investors, big companies to invest in Uruguay. So my question to you is, what does the perfect investor look like?
Sorry.
What does the perfect investor look like? What are you looking for?
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Good question. Thank you. Actually, we are looking to we are starting and we are basing the idea on the same way we do that with exploration and production. So on that are, of course, oil companies that goes to the whole life cycle of the project from the exploration to the production. In that way, you know, most of the oil companies are transitioning to energy companies. So this could be one of the targets for the kind of companies we are looking for. Big energy companies that can take these kind of projects. But of course, also developers with experience in this kind of project. We have divided the contract terms in an evaluation period and on a development and production period where the actual production will take place. And we have some specific criteria for qualification of companies. And basically, the companies that we are looking for are companies with experience in offshore wind, or companies with experience in green hydrogen, or companies with experience in offshore oil and gas. We believe if one fulfill one of those, is able to technically qualify for the different stages of the project.
Thanks. We'll take one very quick question. I know we're out of time.
Hello, everyone. So my question is simple. First is for Brazil. When and where will happen the first offshore wind farm in Brazil? And what are the key players? And my second one is for all of you. What is the percentage of local content you will target in your contract for wind farms in your countries? Thanks.
Wow,
That's
$1 million question.
You go for the Brazil question. Let's do that first.
Yeah. So when and where, it will depend on the market, I think, because we are setting the rules, the framework, the legal and regulatory framework. And the main challenge at this point, I think, it's cost. Because when we look at our 10-year plan, as I mentioned before, we don't see offshore competitive yet for the following 10 years. This is not a barrier, this is not a limitation. This is just a message saying that we need to focus on cost reduction. And if we can do this, if we can manage this, then we can have offshore wind whenever it makes sense. But and it's not just about cost, but also about business model, especially when we talk about hydrogen, for example. Although we have this challenge of cost, maybe developers can find a business model suitable for offshore wind to export, for example. So I think there's a lot of work to do, but the market will give the answer, I think, we need to this question.
Okay. And on the question of local content, I'm not going to ask you to give a specific expectation. Could you say in your renewable energy projects in your countries, do you set targets for local content or not?
No,
Costa
not
Rica,
at all.
no?
No,
Brazil?
not yet.
No, kind of, not for energy auctions, for example. There's no requirement of local content. But if you are using the resources or financing from BNDES, the National Development Bank, then they require local content.
Okay. Juan?
No, yeah, following the same system that in oil and gas, where we don't have yet experience in production, there is no local content requirement there, and the idea is that there won't be local content requirement for offshore wind.
Okay.
As we see, this could be a barrier on this stage of the development.
And Juan? Sorry. Sorry.
We have targets for 2025 that all the electricity must be renewable, and 25% of electricity in 2025
Okay.
be renewable, and for 2030, 30%.
Right.
So that's why we are working in order to increase renewable energy.
Okay. And is there any requirement to do local supply of equipment and services and local content?
Local?
Content, so the requirement for equipment and services to come from Dominican Republic for your projects, or not?
Not.
Okay,
Not
good.
local.
Okay, so we're all open for business for everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we are completely out of time. We will all be at the GWEC stand for the networking drinks at about 5:30. Please do come and speak to our delegates. I'm sure you have plenty of questions for them, and we'll be delighted to discuss this further with you. Thank you so much for listening, and have a good rest of your afternoon.